With a $1,000 budget, you can make a fairly decent gaming PC and play any new titles with relative ease and have a lot of decent settings enabled, like ray tracing and fun stuff. However, most people who build brand new PCs typically might spend a lot more, and not so much a lot less. And so, I figured, why not make a PC with half the budget and creatively see what sort of performance we could get with new parts and what compromises we can make to play some newer titles while also keeping our wallet feeling a whole lot heftier. Are you ready? Well, you better be. After needing to find an excuse to upgrade my test bench for older hardware testing, I decided to also use it as a very good reason to show you all that making a brand new, reasonable $500 gaming PC today is actually pretty doable. I made one back in the Panny D, and it was a gaming PC with some new parts for sure, and for the longest time, it was hard to get a good bang for your buck gaming PC since the making of said video. Well, unless you cheated. But anyways, in the last year, it feels like it's finally achievable and realistic, even if you are just using all new off-the-shelf components. And to demonstrate that point, I will go piece by piece to show you all just that. Starting with our RAM motherboard, the B450 HDV by ASRock. This is the R4.0 version, which will be very important in our case since this version of the model supports AM4 Ryzen all the way up to the 5000 series. We paid only $64.19 for this value board, and this guy may not have many DIMM slots for RAM or SATA ports and whatnot, but it still has a fair amount for what we want and need. However, let's switch gears. We will talk more about RAM and storage in a little, but instead, let's talk about our CPU that we went with. We could have saved a bit of cash and gone with the Ryzen 5 4500, which I did see go for around $70 new, but I want just a bit more performance squeezed in our budget, while also not trying to spend more than $100 for our CPU. I eventually settled on the Ryzen 5500, which is very similar to the 4500, albeit slightly better. It is clocked at 3.6 GHz with a boost to 4.2 and L3 cache of 16 MB, all while still giving us 6 cores and 12 threads, priced at a reasonable $93.09. Which, by the way, seems to often go on a sale for an even lower price than what I got it at. Another benefit of getting this specific model and at its price point is the Wraith Stealth cooler that comes with our CPU, since its TDP is only 65 watts. This is great and helps us pass our savings down onto our GPU or case or other components that we may splurge out on. Now, with that being said, our next part I did not splurge out on. In fact, I did the opposite, because I wanted us to save a bit of money while also still getting us something that works well enough. That is why I settled on 16 gigabytes of RAM from whatever their names are. They are DDR4, they're clocked at 3200 megahertz, they look good. Whatever, listen, cheaping out on RAM isn't a big deal nowadays. It isn't 2012 anymore, and I wanted to experiment with this brand even though I could have gotten some Team Group sticks for a couple bucks cheaper, I think. I paid $33.16 for both these sticks, and they will give us dual channel performance while also helping us keep our prices down fairly well. And as far as I can tell, many reviews say they are pretty reliable. So unless these guys are DOA, we should be A-OK. Did I really write that down? Let's move on and talk about storage for a quick sec. There are many ways you can budget storage depending on use case, how much you need, and how much you are willing to spend if you want to build a new $500 PC with an NVMe drive. You can even get an SSD in a newer build if you want to put more money into other parts, like a GPU for example, in the case you want more performance at the cost of taking an extra 4 or 5 seconds to load a game. After saying all of this, let me show you that I bought an NVMe M.2 and that it is a whopping 2 terabytes of storage. Okay, so I bought this a while back on sale and I kind of forgot about it. Let me be clear, in most situations we could fit a lesser known brand 1TB M.2 or even big name brand 1TB SSD in our system like this and still have a decent budget to play with. It isn't impossible. However, this NVMe SSD only cost me $74.89 because it was on sale, which is still kind of ridiculous now that I'm looking back on it that it was that cheap. And likely for a while, unless it's Cyber Monday or Black Friday, which are both coming up soon. You will probably not be able to grab this amount of storage from a more reliable or trusted brand unless you are like me and just so happen to come across it. I try to keep these builds realistic so that you, the viewer, have a better idea of how to recreate them. So yeah, expect half the storage at the same price that I paid from similar hardware and brands, or even this brand, I think, if you're doing this build at home. With that out of the way, this Silicon Power 2TB NVMe SSD is a great middle-of-the-road option, brand-wise, and while only being PCIe Gen 3x4, it is still one fast NVMe drive, with plenty of storage for me to load up games for benchmarking, testing, and video files if I need to record them on this system. One thing I will have to edit in after the fact is because our system did not come with a heatsink for this drive. I pulled a random one from a drawer that I have been holding on to for some time now. These things can be bought for like a whole $1 on AliExpress, which I think I got mine for like $1.50. So this isn't a big deal or impacts our total cost in the end, but I figured I should mention it since you might see a few shots in the end of this video of the PC with the heatsink on the boot drive. Not that you might need it yourself, since it isn't absolutely necessary, but yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Alright, with that officially out of the way, we can look at the PC case I chose. And there is a catch with this fella too, but not a weird one like with the storage. So, I bought this case over a year ago, and it has just been sitting in my closet behind my desk here for the longest time, not being used. But it really isn't a special case. I didn't get it on sale. It was going to be for a friend's PC. I moved, they got a system eventually, and I never got to use it. It is just a basic ATX case with 2 Molex RGB fans. It was only $53.49, and that is about it. You can get many cases like this one, and in fact, you can get cheaper ones that will be able to house this micro ATX build without much issue. Quality might vary a little, but the only real issue is probably not having RGB, if that is a deal breaker here. But seriously, most cases will work here, and you can get any of them for the same price as this one, or maybe even some in slightly better quality with more parts or extra features. But this one works fine, and has all that we will need for our build. Man, finally got to use that case. Jeez. After double checking that no cables were snagged or caught on any corners, we can move on to the power supply of most people's budget dreams. I was able to pick up the incredibly reliable and certainly safe for bodily consumption. Okay, maybe not that part. CX550 by Corsair. It is a brilliant 550 watt PSU with a 80 plus bronze cert that can do just about everything we need. It may be non-modular, but was only $48.14 as I got it on sale around a month ago, and man, I am glad I bought it. You can't really go wrong with a Corsair power supply, and it will guarantee that the last place I will need to look for a problem when something goes wrong with this test bench will be our PSU. Nice stuff all around. Oh, and while we are here, I might as well mention the cable managing with this case isn't too bad. Not that I will show you the end result because, well, you've seen my $1,000 budget build video. You know I am not the best at making the one part of your PC you will likely never see again look good. Pinout wasn't too bad either. Oh, right, our last part. The one that matters most to all of you. Some of you already recognize the GPU box from the beginning and have probably been shaking your head this entire build thinking, this is a huge waste of money and time. But trust me, you will be a tad surprised with what I have to say and show you. At this point in our limited budget, there wasn't many GPUs to choose from. However, there's one, just one, that fits barely and is actually a decent entry-level card for a new build, so as long as you double-check your study guides and homework to make sure everything is correct on your end. The ARC A380. I have criticized this card plenty of times in the past, and as you can see, I've made 2 videos saying this thing just isn't worth anyone's time. But times do change, and even though hardware typically loses value as newer models come out, the ARC A380 is an anomaly here because while it has had its minor improvements over the years since I've looked at it, the reasonability of it being usable to those who are on a tighter budget has increased. And that is only because more and more new hardware that supports it has come out, while simultaneously on the new market, GPUs haven't budged down all that much price-wise. which somehow this GPU has technically gotten cheaper? I don't know. I guess it's just because it really doesn't sell all that much to begin with. I will go more in depth into this card and the reasons for why I can recommend it now as opposed to back then in a follow-up video sometime around the end of this year. For now, you know what? Let's just finish putting this PC together and see if it turns on. And nice. Looks like things are running smoothly on the Surface. Next, we just need to install Windows 10, go through our BIOS to mess around with our settings, turn on Smart Access Memory, or resizable bar, install drivers, and download some of the games we intend to play on our $500 build. Now that we are finished and set up, let's play some Vidya games. Actually, let's see our Cinebench score first. Okay, starting off with Red Dead Redemption 2 on the balanced low preset setting, or essentially medium settings here. We don't certainly get the highest FPSs or anything, but we do end up getting a fairly decent experience, I might argue. The game looks great for 1080p, and with some tweaking and lowering of some settings here or there, an average of 60 isn't unrealistic. That being said, it isn't that big of a deal for a game to not hit that 60 FPS sweet spot if it is more story-based compared to many other high-end titles that are not. But it does make you wish it would run a bit smoother for just a middle-of-the-road preset for what we have spent. I mean, this PC is fairly middle-of-the-road, but anyways, the story remains fairly the same for Cyberpunk 2077, except with a better result, because while these numbers are a tad lower than Red Dead's, this was at the Ultra preset, which is right under the ray tracing low setting. It looks fairly fine, and turning settings down a notch to just high, once again, easily shoots up our frame rate average past 60 easily. This behavior, as far as I can tell, is consistent among all of the games I've tested, getting around 40 FPS, lowering the preset, and then shooting up to 60, and for the most part, you could get a great experience with adjustments where you need to make them with a PC such as this. I wanted to see how high frame rates would go during my basic benchmarks, but I also think the $20 Samsung monitor I got from Goodwill is messing with my FPS cap, even after I unlocked it in the settings of the games I tested. Still, every title I tried was, for a lack of better words, very acceptable one way or the other. And if this PC is going to play a lot of esports, by the way, expect your settings to be maxed out. Which, hey, that should be a given. I wanted to explore more DirectX 9 titles, or just any non-DirectX 12 games, to see how the art card does given its history, but I will save that for its own video when I get to it. Instead, let's look at our final result for this PC, or rather, how I feel about it. So, how do I feel about it? Even though this is technically a basic test bench for me, and I will pull out that ARC card when I am done here, I feel like it isn't too shabby of a machine, but could be a whole lot better. To be fair, we capped out on our budget, and, well, I guess I will tell you the obvious here, but if you go down the used market rabbit hole, you will be better off and can get a PC that handles itself effortlessly and accomplishes a similar result like how I have here, but with a whole lot of your money saved instead of spent. That doesn't mean this PC is doing terrible though. In fact, in the future, upgrades could be easily made, like replacing the GPU outright, doubling the RAM, adding more storage, and like I mentioned before, if done through the used market, especially if you sell some of your old parts after you get new ones, you're not going to be denting your wallet all that much. I know many of you might think this PC could be done better, and maybe this is true. But just like with the $1,000 build, I wanted it to be reasonable and as repeatable as possible, because you might be considering a brand new build yourself, and if you did this one, I'd say that you'd have a pretty decent entry-level gaming PC that would allow you to at least taste test those newer titles, all at 1080p with ease for the foreseeable future. But I have been blabbering for long enough, so let's wrap this all up. What a fun budget build this was. It certainly was a challenge to build, but I think it came out not too bad in the end and turned into a pretty capable PC with plenty of directions to go in for upgrades for the future. More importantly though, I hope you liked this video or learned something from it. And if you did, subscribe if you want to see more fun content like this. It would mean a lot if you did. Otherwise, you could just like the video if you liked it, join the Discord if you want to, follow me on Twitter, yada yada yada, and oh, as always, thanks for watching.